Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast with Borg, Betz, and a Baller.
Merry Christmas Eve here. Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. It's just Borg and Betz today.
Kyle, that was weak. That was weak, dude. Come on, hit him with the Merry Christmas or the ho, 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 or anything, dude. I mean, you want to try it again?
No.
Oh.
I feel perfectly in step with where I'm at right now, recording this episode with you, which it's going to be a great episode. And I feel like the subject that we're going to talk about, I feel like is going to lead into a lot of 2026 conversations. But no, I feel appropriate.
Okay, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, it's the holidays, it's Christmas, of course, everybody's busy this time of year. Corporate is already sipping eggnog.
Dude, they mailed it in a while back.
Mailed it in. They couldn't care less about this podcast, but you guys know. Borg and Betz, we got you covered, of course. I was giving Kyle a hard time before the show started because if you're watching on YouTube, you will see my lovely Merry Christmas from the Griswolds t-shirt. And Kyle is over here, not festive at all. I said, hey, where's, a Santa hat or an ugly sweater or nothing? He's just not in the holiday spirit. So, Kyle, step up your game.
I actually think people are going to look at this shirt and be like, where can I get a big shimmy shirt? Because they
and
are
the answer
rare.
to that question is?
I think it's Rotorwear, but I think they're sold
I think
out.
you're correct.
I don't
Okay,
think
so
they
you
sell
can't
them
get
anymore. Yeah, no, this is like a limited edition. I feel like people are very intrigued by that. I almost wore my Falcons Christmas sweater, but one, it's not that good looking. Two, it's itchy, and three, like part of me just says like, I don't have to wear Christmas stuff right now.
So on Christmas morning, do you guys do like the whole like matching pajamas type thing, or like what's the vibe in the Borg household?
I definitely will probably be wearing a King Griffey Jr. shirt. That's a given. That's usually like where I pick it out. The boys will wear
nothing
matching.
says Christmas like King Griffey Jr.
Dude, there are few things in life that make me smile more than King Griffey Jr.
I like your hat.
Yeah, no. My kids really this year, they wanted some Seattle Mariners stuff. Spoiler. They're obviously not going to listen to this podcast, but we got a couple of Mariners hats, a throwback Mariners hat, and then another Griffey hat. That's what they wanted. I don't know if
Very
I
cool.
did that to my kids though.
I mean, you certainly had an influence, but that's cool, man. They want to be just like their dad.
Yeah, they like throwback 90s baseball. What about your girls? Betz has 3 girls that are very, very young compared to my boys, but what are they getting?
This is going to be... So this is like the first year they're like very into Christmas. Of course, they're 3 years old. So last year when they were 2, they like kind of got it, but like, couldn't really fully wrap their head around the whole thing. This year, like they've been hyped for weeks. We've been listening to nonstop Christmas music, which I am definitely sick of, in the car and all that sort of stuff. But they're getting a brand new sled, which I'm super excited about. It just snowed this morning here, so hopefully it sticks around. Like the idea to be able to like do that on Christmas morning should be really fun. So hopefully it sticks around. They're getting a trampoline for the basement. Very excited about that. Bunch of clothes, just the usual kind of boring stuff. But they'll be jazzed about those 2 things. But I did ask them. I said, "Hey, you need some new Eagles gear? What's a new T-shirt, new hat,
Division champs gear?"
They just said no. I was like, okay. Cool. Yeah, no, I wasn't going to get one anyway. It's fine. So, sadly, they weren't as excited to get what Dad wanted them to get.
See, I'm excited to take my Kyle Pitts jersey, and it's going to be vintage after this year. It's going to be
dude, they're going to re-sign him.
That's the talk. The talk is delusional Atlanta fans that say, you know what, things aren't as bad as we thought. Like, yes, I've dated this girl for a while, and yes, she's left me 5 times, but maybe we'll go back to her. That is essentially what this relationship is.
He should not have closed the season as hot as he did. I mean, he should have for his own bank account, but it does create a tricky situation for the front office.
On this episode, Betz and I will rewind the film, and then we are going to look at every single team in the NFL, all 32 teams, and give a Dynasty Christmas wish. So before the 2026 year starts, we want to kind of look forward and say, man, if this one thing could happen, or if this organization did this, they used this draft capital this next year, or they re-signed this player. We'll talk about some of those. We'll try to blitz through them all. Some of them will be more interesting than others, but try to get through all 32 teams. If you want all of our resources, fantasyfootballers.com, and right now, even better, you could type in christmasfootball.com and it'll direct you to the website, which discussion today, in Footballers HQ was, man, how much do we hold out for when Netflix comes a calling?
I mean, what was it like last year? There was 1 or 2 games on Christmas. Maybe the year before there was like only 1. This year there's 3. Like, we'll pretty much have a full slate in about 2 years, and you better believe Netflix is going to want ChristmasFootball.com. And let's just say the price is going up. So
it's going
Netflix,
up right now.
We know you're listening. Our balls are in your court.
My kids later on like, oh, how did you pay for college? Well, my dad was a part of a company that bought a domain at just the right time before the craze of Christmas football, ChristmasFootball.com. And it paid for everything. Paid for all the school that they could ever want. My kids became doctors because of this.
This is going to be the biggest sale in company history.
All right, let's jump in.
Weekly Rewind.
Every week we rewind the film and we do a deep dive on a player. I know that when we go through the offseason, we change up a little bit of the structure of these episodes. But just so you know, behind the scenes, we're still looking at film. We're still putting together threads. We're still, trying to figure out where players win, where they don't win. So you had the pleasure of watching Trevor Lawrence, who's been unbelievable recently. My biggest bugaboo, which I know people have known I haven't been the highest on Trevor Lawrence, is they hadn't pushed the ball down the field in the past with a lot of short range stuff. And the inconsistency play to play drove me insane because this was a first read thrower for the first 3 or 4 years of his career. Just like if it's not there, he can't create. But this past week against Denver was unbelievable.
Yeah, and we talked with Jason, I think it was last week on the show, just about Trevor and if this is real and how does it translate to next year and the Liam Cohen system and all those things. And I think our general takeaway was like, Trevor is good, but he probably isn't like a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. And I still believe that, but I'm not sure it matters for fantasy because I want to give flowers to not only Trevor Lawrence, but for what Liam Cohen is doing, especially in the red zone. When you kind of watch like the design of the plays and the motion and some of the easy buttons for Trevor Lawrence that, look, quarterbacks in the NFL, they get easy buttons all the time. They don't convert them. So to Trevor Lawrence's credit, he is running the offense incredibly well. But Cohen will put guys in motion. He had Brian Thomas Jr. in the backfield, put him in motion, and then sent everybody out of the box. And they called a design run for Trevor Lawrence at the goal line. Like stuff that just was not happening with Doug Peterson, who like literally would have rather been anywhere else, the last like month of last season. So to Trevor Lawrence's credit, he is playing so well in the system. And you are seeing roles for all of their skill players that fit so well. Like Parker Washington is like a totally legit NFL wide receiver 3. They just signed Jacoby Myers to an extension. We know what BTJ can do, especially as that kind of classic perimeter wide receiver. So I love what they're doing in Jacksonville. I love the way that he fits in the system with Trevor Lawrence. And the thing that I think is so encouraging for fantasy and for the offense in general moving forward is we always knew Trevor could run, right? He could scramble, he could pick up 20, 25 yards a game, stuff like that. If they're going to do what they're doing now and also call some design stuff at the goal line for him, it could really unlock a ceiling we have not seen from Trevor Lawrence before. So yeah, just really impressed here with what Cohen and the offense has done. I'll admit I was very skeptical because when you look at the matchups from like the last 6 weeks, it was like, all right, the Titans and whoever else, like, pretty easy matchups. Going on the road to Denver is no joke. And they came out and just put it on them. So hat tip to Trevor Lawrence, Liam Cohen, all those guys, very impressed for what they've done this year.
Over the last 6 weeks, they are 7th in pass rate over expectation. So the narrative has been that Liam Cohen came here and the first 2 months of the season was like, okay, Lawrence had his moments, but he's kind of the same inconsistent quarterback. They've kind of let loose since the bye. Like, since that week 8 bye, this team has lost, 1 game, and Travis Etienne's been really, really good. It's just impressive to see the trajectory of, in Dynasty, you look at Trevor Lawrence as like, he's a strong QB2. But like, okay, is there a top 5 ceiling still play? Like, he's been the QB2 since that bye week in fantasy football. Moving forward, would you say that is he top 12? Top 12 in Dynasty startups?
I think he deserves to be in the top 12. You can't really put him super, super high when you consider kind of the guys that have always been there. But I don't know, quarterback 10 to 12, somewhere in that range feels right to me. And entering the season, I always viewed him as like quarterback 15 to 18, something like that. I still don't know like it's a small sample size, right? So like, I don't know how truly real the performance that he has had recently is moving forward, but we saw basically like no signs of progression in his career for the first year to 2 years, and then like kind of stalled out for a couple of years, with Doug Peterson. But like Liam Cohen, I trust the offense. Like we saw what he did with Baker. We're seeing what he's doing now. And so whatever opinion you have of Trevor from a real life NFL standpoint, it might not matter. Like if he can just orchestrate the offense and do what he's supposed to do in the system and he has the skill guys to support him, I think he's going to be good for fantasy. So yeah, somewhere in that quarterback 10 to 12-ish range feels pretty right to me.
Yeah, when we did the Dynasty tiers, I want to say it was like a month or two ago, he was in this range of 12 to 17. So you could put him at the top of that tier now. Maybe some people are like, hey, he's a top 10 quarterback. You start going down the list, it's like, okay, are you going to put him ahead of Bo Nix? I know he just beat him, but I think I'd rather still have Bo Nix in Dynasty.
They're close.
But it's close. The point is that there's a tier of players that are very, very similar in value, and he's playing out of his mind right now. So props to him. I definitely did not see a turnaround of this magnitude. If you would have told me he loses Travis Hunter and this team has a chance at the number 1 seed, that's crazy to me.
Yeah, it's interesting discussion point because obviously like Travis Hunter is an incredible talent, but I do kind of feel like in the first, 6 weeks, 5 weeks, I forget when he actually got injured, but like in the first month and a half, they were still trying to figure it out, right? And it's like uncharted waters. Like we don't really see this in the NFL. Nobody plays both sides of the ball. And when he would be on offense, I almost felt like they had to like force feed him the ball because he only played a certain number of snaps and he was only in the slot. And so it kind of took some creativity away from the offense. But now you have Jacoby Myers and Parker Washington and guys that just fit the role so well. So in theory, when they get Travis Hunter back next year, the ceiling should be even better. I'm not sure what that looks like from a personnel standpoint and how they use him, but I do want to just kind of point that out that like it is so impressive because they went up and they got him with a 2nd overall pick and they basically haven't had him most of the season, right? So even that is very impressive in and of itself, considering he was helping on the defensive side of the ball too.
Right now, Trevor Lawrence is on pace for the 6th most fantasy points of any quarterback that's in year 5 in the NFL. So it's like Josh Allen, Cam Newton, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. And then right there, Trevor Lawrence is trending to be 6th best. He could easily finish in the top 10, even if he's just mediocre the rest of the way. I looked at Chris Olave, who I would say both of us have always had an affinity for Chris Olave. He's been a my guy for me in the past. 16 targets this past week. We do need to at least like look at the tape and say that team that they were playing, known as the Jets, is a shell of a team. Just trying to get to the end of the year. I mean, Brady Cook was sacked 8 times. So a lot of this was like short fields and lots of issues. But Chris Olave, in the first 39 games of his career, he had 10 total touchdowns. This kind of was his bugaboo for a long time. In 15 games this year, he has 8 receiving touchdowns. And maybe the 15 games played is the bigger talking point because he's just been a player that he's dealt with concussions. And even this offseason, we talked about on the main show, he thought about retiring. He thought about like, hey, I'm talking with my family. Maybe this isn't the right decision. I can't go through another one of these things again, but so far it's been an awesome season. He's the wide receiver 6. And just watching the film, what you love about Chris Olave is they use him on these crossing routes that Kellen Moore, I think, has just always been good with, whether it was CeeDee Lamb, Keenan Allen is just across the field. So good. But even just behind the defense, like I feel like Tyler Shuck is able to anticipate way better than I thought of just reading NFL defenses. It is the Jets. But getting behind the defense was always the thing with Chris Olave. It's just that the catch rate was so low because the targets with Spencer Rattler weren't catchable. But Chris Olave, I have him in Dynasty League. I thought I was going to win and go to the finals, but I got puka'd. And that didn't help. But Olave right now, I think you have to feel really good that whatever value you thought you lost this offseason, you've gained it all back.
For sure, yeah. And the concussion concerns like aren't going to magically go away this offseason, right? Like it's tricky because this is not an injury where you're saying like, hey, this guy's had recurring hamstring issues. Like I'm a little worried about that. It's like, does he take a hit or not? And you can't really predict that. So there was a lot of risk reward with Olave entering this season because the market was so scared of him, not just in dynasty startups, but like redraft, best ball, everything. Like everybody was kind of off Chris Olave. And to some degree, I get it because of the quarterback systemic concerns and stuff. But like we talked about on the show, probably like 3 or 4 times now at this point, Tyler Shuck is playing good football, like legit good football. And I don't know how much of that is real, right? Like he wasn't the best prospect in the world. He's older, all those things. We've talked about that at length. But he does run the offense effectively. And Kellen Moore, I think, is a really good play caller. He's had success basically everywhere he's gone on the offensive side of the ball has Kellen Moore, and you're seeing it now. So I do think with Chris Olave, with Tyler Shuck, we've got something here moving forward. Is it always going to be this good? Of course not. No wide receivers are always this consistent, unless you're, Puka or JSN. But I do think Kellen Moore has been awesome for both Shuck and Olave, because before, like, Olave was always a guy that the talent was there, but sometimes with these like legit alpha wide receivers, it's like, why don't they give them the high value, like down the field stuff, but also some of these layup targets just to get them going? And Kellen Moore understands that. Tyler Shuck understands that. And Chris Olave is clearly the guy here. So obviously very encouraged by what we've seen here over the last month plus.
They've won 3 in a row. They are playing their way out of a top 10 pick. Just by the way, I mean, they faced the Titans this week. But when I look at the wide receivers around wide receiver 15 land, it's like Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Ladd McConkey, Chris Olave, Rome Odunze. Like, I think you could make the case. I think I'd want Pickens ahead of Olave, but we're like, Olave might be ahead of the rest of that group. He will be in the conversation with Drake London, too, of getting paid this offseason. That'll be
right.
the conversation. But, yeah, I think he's right around wide receiver 15, 16 land.
Still only 25 years old, just now entering his prime. I buy it.
Yep. All right, let's take a quick break, and then we'll be right back. All right, Betz, it is not quite Christmas, and so you still have some time to get in your thoughts, your wishes about all the players on your Dynasty roster, everything that you could ever want. Let's get into it.
Ho, ho, ho! Merry Christmas!
People know, if they've been around long enough of footballers' world, they understand who the voiceover guy is. It's Jason. And so that one, I think, is one of the clearer drops that when you hit the button, you know it's Jason.
I thought that was Santa.
It's Big Shimmy, I can tell you that. And I have a quick wish that I need to throw out there.
Okay.
Because I am in a Dynasty League final in the Footballers Main Dynasty League. It's Jeremy and I's team. Yeah, no big deal. Jeremy and I's team versus Mike's very, very good team. Our team has high-end talent. Puka, JSN, Tedero McMillan. I mean, we have some absolute ballers on our team, okay? We are just hurting, dude. We are just dying. Like, Jane Daniels, gone. Can't count him. Jordan Love, can't count on him anymore. Josh Jacobs, will he play? We have one tight end available on our roster, and his name is Travis Kelce, who I don't even know if he wants to play anymore.
You better hope so, brother, because you're playing him.
It's him or Luke Musgrave. Put it that way.
I play Kelce.
Look, it's really, really bad. But we basically are hoping that Puka and JSN put up, 80 points combined, like they can do.
They can.
And we'll see. So that is my real Christmas wish. But we're going to go division by division, kind of go quickly, make this a little bit of a quick hitting episode. And Betz and I are going to go back and forth of saying, hey, here's one thing that I think I want. And we're trying not to put our fandom in here. We're trying to say, if I had these players, here's what I would want from this team. Here's what I'd like to see from like a team success standpoint. When we get to February and March, one of the things that Betz and I do in the Dynasty Pass is we go team by team and we talk about what we refer to as the ecosystem or the environment of the team, of what else is here that actually allows for fantasy points or team success to kind of grow. So we'll talk about all of those as we get there. But in the AFC East, I'm going to start there. It's the Patriots, who one win away from the division title. It's amazing. They obviously have a shot at the number 1 seed. I would love to see this team, as it grows, as they get different pieces, to add a young, I'm calling seam tight end, like a tight end, like Terrence Ferguson would be a great example. Somebody who's young, not super, super expensive. I know he's a 2nd round pick, but a 2nd or 3rd round pick at tight end that can stretch the field, where of course they have Kayshon Boutte, but I would love to see a tight end. Hunter Henry's still there. He's still dependable, but I want to see a young tight end join Drake May.
Yeah, their skill group is actually kind of interesting. Like when I picture their skill group, as a whole, I mostly think about dependable options, right? Like Matt Collins, Steph Diggs,
Dude, I
Hunter
might
Henry.
Start Matt Collins in a league this week.
I
in a
might
championship.
actually also.
Oh, man.
If Booty's out. But, not like guys that, and Diggs obviously at a point in his career was like a legit alpha. But like at this point in his career and the other guys I mentioned, Pop Douglas, Hunter Henry, like they're all solid. They don't have like a legit alpha one. And I think that would obviously help this offense immensely. The other thing that I was thinking was just like, man, more offensive line investments.
Yes.
Build around Drake May, build around Travion Henderson, the run game. They did it what they had to do last year. They took a tackle 4th overall. They kind of just had to do it. This year, I feel like they should double down, get another offensive lineman somewhere in there. The offensive line is obviously better than it was last year, but it still has room to grow for sure.
For Buffalo, I think we just need to move on from this pipe dream and whatever they're trying to do at wide receiver. It works for Josh Allen, but I feel like we want to see somebody emerge, and apparently it's not Keon Coleman because we know he can't separate, and 2, you really can't separate if you're not active on game day.
Yeah, rough, man. I think, dude, it's going to sound so counterintuitive, but I think the Bills winning the Super Bowl might be the worst thing for this dream, this wish. Because if they do win the Super Bowl, Brandon Beane's going to say, look, we don't need wide receivers. Look what we just did. We have Josh Allen. And that can get you in trouble when you analyze it that way. It is clear as day. Like you saw it in the Browns game this past weekend, right? Like they do not have guys that can win against man coverage. Like, Gabe Davis, Tyrell Shavers, Josh Palmer beat us, right? Like you're basically saying, if we stop the run game, we kind of keep Josh Allen in the pocket. I'm not scared of these wide receivers. They need somebody that can actually threaten. And to their credit, they did try to do that with Keon Coleman. It just hasn't worked out. But yeah, it's hard to compete in this league with wide receivers that they have on this roster. Now they have an amazing offensive line, James Cook, all those things. They're clearly going to always be in contention as long as Josh Allen is healthy. But I feel like to get them really over the hump, they do need that piece.
For Miami, if McDaniels is still around,
I think he will be.
Then I would say where they're picking, they're 6-9 right now. They're picking 10th overall. Let's say if they're around this range, they'd have to trade up at quarterback. I don't mind if they trade for Mac Jones.
I mean,
somebody is going to come knocking this offseason for Mac Jones.
Imagine that being your wish. Let's get McCorkle over here. Figure it out. No, I see what you're saying.
Maybe
it does.
That's not really a wish. It's actually like kind of realistic, but also sad.
Right. But it does seem the writing is on the wall. Like they're obviously going to move on from Tyreek, save a bunch of money. It seems like Tua's certainly done in Miami. So it's like, what is the quarterback situation for this team? And with Mike McDaniel, like I know there's been frustrations in Miami this year. It's been an up and down season overall. His scheme is still so good. So yeah, just get the quarterback in there that can run it, that can actually throw downfield, that they can build the offense the way he wants it around the quarterback. And obviously good things will happen. They also need to definitely address the wide receiver position with the Tyreek issues beyond that. But yeah, I think just getting that quarterback stabilized will go a long way for the team in general. Mac Jones is interesting, man. They'd be an interesting fit. Do you think the Niners would give him up?
I mean, I think there will definitely be conversations, but I think they've seen how valuable he could be. I mean, the Jets, I also put depth at wide receiver, just playmakers, skill position players. If Breece Hall leaves, this entire division, you realize, like, man, this is the worst division when it comes to wide receivers.
Yeah, I mean, to their credit with the trade, I know that like there was a lot of like, oh, A.D. Mitchell, like what a joke. They just threw him in there.
He fits a good role for this team once Garrett Wilson's back too.
For sure, yeah, I think he's an awesome fit. And to their credit, they did get him as like, in Dynasty leagues, we do this all the time. It's like, yeah, just throw him in. And they came out and said he was a part of the trade. They targeted him. And to his credit, like he does seem to have found a role here and found a home. We'll see what it looks like next season with Garrett Wilson there. But yeah, you have Garrett Wilson, you have A.D. Mitchell. We'll see what Mason Taylor can develop into. And you've got a good offensive line. Like the offensive line is, I think, legit. So I don't mind the wide receiver situation as much maybe as you, but it's all a moot point if they can't figure out quarterback.
And they're at the point right now where if they don't get their pick of Fernando Mendoza, then it'll be interesting. We'll talk more this offseason about how the draft shakes out and if it's worth taking a quarterback, but there are a couple teams right there in the top 5 or 6 that look like they could go at quarterback, and they've been
kind of a Kyler team. I've heard rumors about that.
Maybe AFC North with Pittsburgh. For fantasy, I just want them to move on from Rodgers and Tomlin. I feel like maybe that's too much of a curmudgeon take, but for fantasy and Arthur Smith, but that won't happen because they're going to win the division. Everyone's going to be around.
You think they run it back with Rodgers again?
As long as Kenneth Gainwell's here, then he's going to say yes.
Dude, he loves Kenneth Gainwell.
I kind of like that side of Rodgers. Rodgers, you guys know, like it's very easy to not like the dude, but the fact that he's like, Kenneth Gainwell's my dude. I respect that.
I saw an interview after the game this past weekend, which did you see the Kenneth Gainwell touchdown catch?
Yes.
That was unbelievable. Unbelievable. And he was talking about it. He's like, man, I wish I played with him for 10 years in my career. He loves him. Yeah, Pittsburgh's interesting, right? Because it's like, they're doing enough. This has been the Tomlin story, right? They're doing enough to stay relevant, stay competitive, not finish the losing record. And then like they get in the postseason, they don't have the firepower. So we'll see what they do this year. But yeah, it's like, man, if you don't have real weapons with Rodgers to like drag him along and kind of like keep it going, I just don't know how sustainable it is. MBS, Thielen, Metcalf, meh, is all I'll say.
Dude, for the Ravens, I feel like I've had this same question for years. I want more explosive players. And Rashad Bateman was someone they took in the first round. Zay Flowers, I think, is good for his role. I still feel like they're short an explosive wide receiver, like where I could confidently say Zay, Bateman, and somebody else in 3 wide receiver sets.
Their offense, I think, is so interesting moving forward. And I don't think Lamar has like lost a step or anything like that, but he's obviously been banged up for almost the entire season. We do talk about this, like when quarterbacks that are elite rushers approach 30 and get a little bit over 30, some of the rushing comes down. You have to figure out, kind of, in my opinion, like a plan for what this looks like when Lamar does become more of a pocket passer. And I do think getting that extra weapon would help. So yeah, we'll see. It feels like they're a little bit at like a crossroads where it's like Henry's at the end of his career. They signed Andrews to an extension, which was surprising. I think
Yes.
People thought that would be likely. But yeah, get one more guy that can really open it up. Obviously, D-Hop at this point in his career is kind of just a possession guy.
Yeah, and you'll see whatever they do with Likely. Charlie Kohler is also in the final year of his deal. Like, there's going to be some other tight end that gets brought in or drafted alongside Andrews. So kind of waiting on that. For Cincinnati, I guess just help the offensive line. Help us.
Whatever Joe Burrow wants, that's what you got to do. That's my wish. Make Joe Burrow happy, because when he's on the field and Chase and T are healthy, good things happen for fantasy.
Do you think Chase Brown gets talk of an extension?
I could see, I mean, they seem to like him a lot. I could see him getting a 2-year deal or something like that.
He is basically Kyron, is what he is to them.
Yeah.
Same sort of situation. And then for the Browns, I think we're going to talk about the quarterback. That's going to be a major point. With Harold Fannin, we are at the point where you can make him the focal point of this offense, and they essentially get to become a Ravens-esque team. They're not like, they're never going to be this high-powered offense the way that you want, where you get 40 dropbacks per game. Whenever you've gotten that in the last couple years, it's been disaster, right? Shadur, DTR for a couple of starts was just like, dude, they don't need to drop back that much. But if they like turn into the Ravens, like this could be a legit good team if their defense also remains really, really good. But I just want Harold Fannin to be the focal point of the offense for my dynasty team.
And mine as well. He kind of already is, right? They
Yes.
gave him a rush attempt at the goal line this past week.
He has a 31% target share over the last month.
He's been great. Really, really good. Good player.
I love it. AFC South, for the Jaguars, there is a lot of conversation this offseason, what they're going to do at wide receiver. I want the deck cleared at running back. And that's probably maybe asking too much, but I would love for it to be Bishal Tootin time.
I would love that too. I have Tootin in a ton of dynasty leagues just because the conversation in the offseason, it's like ETN, contract year, they handpicked Tootin, all those things. But to ETN's credit, he never gave the job up, right? He's been really good this year. I feel like an extension is coming for Travis Etienne, don't you? With just the success that they've had. And
yes.
That's Trevor's dude and, that whole thing. So I'm with you. For my personal teams, I wish that this was the case, but I think realistically, they probably get something done with Etienne.
For Houston, I would love for them to just become a 3-wide team that just says, this is who we are. Because they do have the tight ends in place, like Cade Stover. He came back. They have Schultz.
My nasty boy.
Dude, I just want I want Jaden Higgins, I want Jalen Noel to be a thing on the field alongside Nico Collins. And I just feel like they're just never quite there.
Yeah, but, to their credit, they at least are kind of like, I think they're forward thinking with those 2 picks this past year in the draft of like, hey, we got to support CJ with more weapons. We know Christian Kirk is a little older, but still can be productive at times. It does feel like that's where things are trending for next season, that your 3 wide receiver set, is going to be Nico, Jaden Higgins, and then Jalen Noel in the slot.
For the Colts, man, I feel so bad for their fans because they're at a point this year where they're like, oh my gosh, we know what we're going to do. Selfishly, this is a selfish Christmas wish here. I would love for them to try Anthony Richardson one more time, just so that I can have some dynasty life that resurrects. But if they wanted to sign Daniel Jones to a short-term deal and see what they have left in Richardson and just pair those two together one more time and wait for Jones to come back, I would be interested in that.
I think they almost have to, with Jones coming off surgery for his Achilles, there's probably not going to be a huge market for him in free agency because you think about you're rehabbing all spring, you're probably limited most of training camp. So is an NFL franchise going to pay big money to a guy who already has an injury history? And let's face it, before this year had kind of been wildly inconsistent. Learning a new playbook and all those things, probably not. But the Colts know what they have in him and they've had success and all those things. So I think the most likely outcome for Daniel Jones is he is the Colts quarterback, but maybe they need to buy a month or something till he's healthy. And then they probably turn to Richardson and cross their fingers.
Here's what's going to happen is you're going to have Richardson on your roster somewhere, and you're going to have a month of just dirty fantasy gold where it's like, oh, he ran 7 times. He completed 48% of his passes, and you ended up with 23 fantasy points.
That sounds pretty good to me.
No, it sounds awesome. That's going to drive them crazy. Shane Steichen's going to lose hair, but that's how it's going to work. For Tennessee, it is nice to kind of see over this last month, they've kind of turned it around. I just want an offensive-minded head coach. So I don't want some defensive guy that they're going to have to bring an offensive coordinator and then flip that around every 2 to 3 years. Somebody with creativity out there. And what's going to happen is somebody's going to get poached somewhere, and they're going to end up being thrust into being the guy here. I really hope that some of the play callers that are already attached to players I like Greg Roman is just an offensive play caller. He doesn't really want to be a head coach. So that would be nice if he just kind of stays there. But I start looking up and down and going, who are the other play callers that could come in and turn around this franchise? Grant Uzinski of the Jaguars is going to get some calls this year.
He's their OC?
Yes.
But really Liam Cohen's?
Yes, but he's going to get calls. He was with O'Connell in Minnesota. Now he's with Jacksonville. You just kind of look at regimes that are successful and you can figure out how much did he really do, but he's going to be a young name that's going to get called.
Yeah, I mean, the Titans, it's very clear what their goal should be this offseason. How can we figure out ways to support our first pick from last year? Get Cam Ward weapons, keep improving the offensive line, get him a play caller that can play to his strengths and kind of have a good marriage there. That's clearly the goal, and I hope they figure it out. I think Cam Ward can be successful in this league. The sacks are an issue and all those things, but like you said, he's cleaned it up a lot in the last, back half of the year. Hopefully with a better play caller and scheme and all those things that it can continue into 2026.
I think I could see Clint Kubiak here.
That makes sense. But if Seattle's successful, maybe he just wants to run it back.
You'd think that. And he would go, hey, please pay up. What's weird about Seattle, they're the number 1 seed, yet they have more turnovers than they did last year with Geno.
That's crazy. Is that real?
Yes. Darnold has turned it over. Their turnover differential is even worse.
It doesn't feel like that, but...
Well, he's had games, remember, he's had 4 INTs. Some of them are just complete blow-ups.
Yeah, the first Rams game.
AFC West, we'll finish here at the AFC. Denver, I just wrote, I want it to be Pat Bryant time. Because if you drafted Pat Bryant in the second round, late second round of your dynasty draft, you're kind of like, I don't know what he is. They took him in the 3rd round. They obviously think highly of him. But it was a wait-and-see approach. You never thought, this guy's going to break out right away. And over the last 5 to 6 weeks, I feel like if you watch the games, if you watch the film, Betz, you see a player that just looks like he belongs in the NFL, looks smooth. Obviously, big-time injury this past weekend. But I was looking at their cap situation, and I was like, man, maybe my wish would be their defense gets worse. Maybe like somebody gets poached, right? Like the Eagles have been poached in the past. What was it, Milton Williams? Just players like that, where it's like, if you win, you're going to get poached the next year. They have pretty much everybody under contract, except for Singleton, their linebacker. Like literally everybody's under contract.
That's really good heading into the offseason.
No, it's good for that. For the game we play for fantasy, I want their defense to be worse.
That would be ideal. That would be ideal for Bo Nix and the ceiling and pass volume and all those things. Yeah, Pat Bryant's honestly like done better than I thought he would. Because he didn't have like the cleanest, production profile and all those things coming out of school. But I think he's a really good fit in kind of this like secondary wide receiver role across from Courtland Sutton. And maybe as the next year to 2 years go by and Sutton kind of slowly, not ages out, but like leaves his prime, maybe there'll be room for Pat Bryant to kind of step in here. So I like that call quite a bit. I also have such a soft spot in my heart for Troy Franklin that I kind of don't want this wish to come true, but at the same time, I get it for Pat Bryant.
For the Chargers, if Rashawn Slater and Joe Alt could just be healthy, my heart would be happy. But my real selfish wish is that they would bring my boy Keenan back one more time.
No.
Just one more time, because right now he's sitting at 1,047 career receptions. He can get into the top 10 with about another 25.
See, as somebody that has Ladd in a couple places, get him out.
Dude, I love Ladd. I love Ladd too, but I'm saying I think Keenan deserves to be in the top 10 list.
Okay, he can do that on the, Chiefs next year.
Okay, because Travis Kelce right now is the person at 10th overall. So that would be pretty cool if he jumped ahead. But no, not the Chiefs, man.
I know, that was a bad example. But like, if I'm thinking about this offense, kind of
like the Falcons or something.
Oh, a contender. Good idea. It just kind of feels like the end is here.
Dude, third
but one of those situations where it goes 1 year too far and you're like,
yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like with Julio. When Julio did that, it was like, oh no.
Yeah.
When your heroes, when they fall, dude, that is a bad, bad feeling.
Yeah. We'll see. But yes, I agree. Offensive line health for Hampton, for Herbert.
Yes.
Yes, please. If the offensive line can stay healthy, I do think they're a top 5 unit in the league.
All right, the Chiefs, obviously we want Mahomes back for the sake of the entire offense, but this team needs a run. Are they going to look at this offseason and go, okay, we tried to do that Kareem Hunt thing one more time. It was over. I'm glad they didn't extend Pacheco because he'll be a free agent. I guess the Brashard Smith truthers are going to be really excited that there's a chance, but they said that this past year. Is it just like you need a legit running back because they've been playing the running backs don't matter game, and that's fine, but do you think they flip the script this offseason?
I think just for this year upcoming, they have to have a running game. Like, you can't ask Mahomes to be your leading rusher, period. That's not a good strategy, but off of an ACL plus LCL surgery, which is going to linger into the season, you can't have that be a formula for success. So how do you protect him? You have to have a run game. And we already saw it. They tried to trade for Breece Hall. There was a slight disagreement between the Jets and Chiefs on the compensation for the trade. But Breece is a free agent. There's no way he's going back to New York, dude. He's ready to leave. And I think the Chiefs bring him in. So that would be amazing for Breece Hall. That would be awesome for the offense in general. They have offensive line injuries right now, but like they try to address it with the left tackle pick this past year and all those things. So yeah, I think for Mahomes to be the best version of himself this year, which I think it'll be a couple of years before we see that again. But for this upcoming season to kind of insulate around this ACL injury, you have to have a run game. And what they have personnel-wise right now just isn't getting it done.
All right, let's finish out with the Raiders because I have a lot of wishes for this team. My selfish wish is Jack Besh to be a thing, just to be a thing. But realistically, they need to clean house. Pete Carroll, Grandpa, you've done great work in the past. The fact that your son is the run game coordinator and the offensive line coach, and you guys are by far last in the NFL in EPA per rush. I mean, just by a mile. This team is not in a good situation. So cleaning house would be really good. And then on top of that, it would be a very Raiders thing for them to win this weekend, not have the top pick, and then still reach on a quarterback.
Man, this when you look at, people that do like NFL draft content and NFL draft previews and it's like team needs, like literally you could list anything. And I'd be like, that makes sense, except for tight end and running back. But outside of that, they need it. So yeah, don't reach on whatever position you think you need. I think they did with Genti. Trade back, get more picks, just clean house. Like you said, they're in a reset. And it's tough because you look at like what kind of head coach wants to come take that on if they do move on from Pete Carroll. And there are people that like would chomp at the bit at any opportunity to head coach in the NFL. But you look at the situation systemically, like the ecosystem here is terrible. So do you want to take a job and probably lose for 3 years in a row and maybe you don't stick around for the next go around? It's just a really, really tough situation in Las Vegas.
It is a weird situation. I just watched the Lane Kiffin documentary. It was on ESPN, where it talks about behind the scenes of him when he's super young and went from offensive coordinator in college to the head coach of the Raiders. He's like, dude, I was not prepared. And Lane Kiffin is his own thing of just as a person and if you like him or don't like him. But the point is that this organization for a long time has kind of been this, spot where it's like, hey, a lot of things have to change. So we'll see what they do. Let's take a quick break and we'll get to the NFC. All right, we're going to be in the NFC East, starting with your Eagles bets. What are they going to do this offseason about A.J. Brown?
That's the talking point, or it will be the talking point, right? Because it's like outside looking in, everybody thinks he wants out. But if you watch, sideline stuff, and if you watch currently like the Hard Knocks that's going on, it's all just noise. It's all noise on the outside. Of course, it always is. But they do have to have a backup plan because he signed to a ton of money. He's entering the start of his career where it's like, okay, you start to get a little concerned about like, is there a downfall here? Is he the player he was 3 or 4 years ago? Those questions will start to pop into your mind. I just don't think he'll be good for the next couple of years, but it's not like it's going to be forever, obviously. So yeah, get a backup plan for AJ Brown. Get a better scheme, please. Like, have you seen the rumors about what's going on here in Philly?
They've basically mentioned anything and everything. It's a town where people will say anything.
Well, if you watch like the route concepts for the last 2 weeks, there's a lot of people that are like, I don't think Patullo is calling the plays anymore. And so maybe there's been like a soft benching for Patullo, but nobody knows like who's actually doing it. Anyway, obviously that's been the talking point all year. It's not been good scheme wise. Largely, it's been a little better recently. Hopefully that continues. But yeah, get a backup plan for AJ Brown down the line, and then a better scheme next year for sure.
When's the last time they, other than Devonta Smith, what other wide receivers have they drafted that have turned out well?
That have turned out well? Not many. I mean, you had the Rager pick a few years ago. That didn't go great.
Aguilar.
That
I just feel like you need to infuse somebody in the mix because Jahan Dotson's not cutting it either, man.
I mean, if you want to go way back, Jeremy Maclin.
Oh yeah, no, I'm fine with
he was good.
Dirty Cake, as he was once known as.
Yeah, dude, what a throwback, Dirty Cake. He was the 19th overall pick.
Nice. For the Cowboys, it's not that complicated. It's extend George Pickens. I know that Jerry will probably want to franchise him. Right now, he is 88 for 1342 and 9 with 2 games left to pay.
I think he can go nuts on Thursday against Washington. If he closes the year, like he had an awesome game last week.
He can have 1,500 yards on the season.
I was going to say, if he puts together 2 really impressive performances year down the stretch, teams are going to come calling, or at least, put up huge money for him. But I don't think Jerry lets him leave, man. You can't, with how valuable he is to Dak and the offense and opening up CD on the other side and all those things. Yeah, and I'm a fan of what Schottenheimer's built there as far as like the culture and everything.
Yes.
So, Pickens, it's always fun when we think about like, oh, what if T. Higgins leaves Cincinnati? Or like, what if Pickens leaves Dallas? No, like this is a good environment. I want him in Dallas. Let's keep it going.
All right. Would you rather have George Pickens or Emeka Egbuka in Dynasty, or as people call him all the time,
rookie sensation, wide receiver out of Ohio State, Emeka Egbuka?
Man, that is so tough. I think Pickens.
I think it's Pickens, and it's not super complicated to me.
Really? Are we being too recency biased with the last rough 6-week stretch or whatever it's been?
Do you know what their age difference is?
It's probably only like a year.
It's a year and a half.
Yeah, because every time we talk about Ibuka, I always call him like Big Boo, because he came into the league as an older prospect.
I mean, I think Pickens is right there, fringe top 10 dynasty wide receiver. So hopefully that's what happens. Washington, they need to get younger, dude. We talked about this before the season. We said this roster is going to turn over. They extended McLaurin right before the season, but Debo, Ertz, we knew was going to be gone. We even talked about the backfield, like Eckler. They're going to have to just restart. And so hopefully my selfish wish is that they would unleash Ben Sinnott, who, dude, his snaps every week moving up.
If these trends continue, Kyle.
In my snaps league, he's killing it.
What about routes run?
It's good. It's not great yet.
Okay, we'll get there. Yeah, they have a lot of issues, right? I mean, you could convince me of anything with this team outside of Jaden Daniels. It's like they don't really have a legit running back. They've got a good wide receiver 1, but they don't have a great wide receiver 2. And Debo's clearly entering the part of his career where like he kind of needs to like be a possession role type player. And then defense, it's a mess everywhere, right? So like they have a lot of issues. The good news is they still have the flexibility with the cap because of Jaden Daniels on that rookie deal. So they do have to maximize that and really be aggressive, I think, and kind of go for it. The tough part is an NFC, man. Like if the Rams stay as good as they are, and obviously you have the Eagles in the division, the Cowboys I think are going to be better next year. The Niners,
yes.
Like the list goes on and on with all these teams that are like, man, you have to have a top tier roster to even compete. And it does feel like they have way too many pieces away from that. But for Dynasty, let's get Jaden some more weapons, keep the offensive line better, and you've got to support him with a defense.
For the Giants, I mean, they hit on the quarterback, which is very rare, especially late in the first round with Jackson Dart.
Yeah.
Upgrading the offensive line. Obviously, they have to get a new play caller, new head coach. They've lost 9 straight. They currently have the number 1 overall pick. If they lose this past weekend, they'll have it locked in.
Play the Raiders, right?
Yeah, play the Raiders. Basically, the loser of that game gets the number 1 pick. The Raiders would be quite inclined to do it, but they're the Raiders.
Do you think Pete will tank and do the right thing?
No way.
For the culture.
In the meetings, dude, he's rallying the troops.
Is he?
I don't know. NFC North, the Packers, I just want them to clear the deck, man. I know that Romeo Doubs has probably been their dependable player this past weekend aside. Matthew Golden, still waiting. Still waiting on that first touchdown, buddy. And then Jaden Reed is all over the place. Like week to week, I have no idea what kind of wide receiver he is. They extended Christian Watson. So I want the options to be condensed. But then you also have Tucker Kraft coming back. So that's my wish, is that somebody would go away. Maybe even 2 options would go away. But I feel like this team is fine and just everybody playing their own role.
That's how they like it seems. Yeah, they're tricky, right? Because it's like, if you have a healthy Tucker Kraft and a good run game and like good to, I wouldn't say great, but like above average kind of talent around that can work in the NFL. And we've seen that. The problem is like when you don't have that guy that can win after the catch and you are relying on these really unreliable, inconsistent options week in and week out, then you see the highs and you also see the lows, and it can kind of go in any number of directions. But yeah, that's been the story for the Packers for 2 or 3 years in a row. It's like, it could be anybody this week. And for fantasy, for start-sit decisions, that's super, super tough. So it would be nice if they condensed it a little bit, but it kind of seems like this is what LaFleur wants.
For Chicago, I think we would both prefer if it was Luther Burden and Colston Loveland as the 1 and 2, but we're obviously going to have to reintroduce Odunze in the mix, figure out how DJ Moore works. Cole Kmet can be cut this offseason, so that will also change things. He could stay around too. They did give him a good extension a couple years ago, but I just want these two to have moments where they are peppered with more than like 4 or 5 targets.
I think they will be next year, because you look at just the draft capital investment. These are the first 2 picks of the Ben Johnson era. Obviously, Loveland in the first round, Luther Burden in the second round. And then you're thinking about, okay, if I'm looking at the roster, like where are the weaknesses? They put so much investment in the offensive line. You still have Caleb on the rookie deal. It's like the clear weakness on this team is the defense. They don't really have a great pass rush. So I could see them just addressing a lot of that in the offseason and going kind of status quo here with what's going on. And if that happens, I think Luther Burden and Colston Loveland can have a really, really big step forward here in year 2, in particular Colston Loveland.
Dude, this past weekend, I was told that Colston Loveland was a good play for my team, and I started him on my Dynasty roster. What happened, man?
Who told you that? The internet?
You and Mike.
I don't remember that.
I was also told to bench Tyler Warren to play Colston Loveland.
Did they score the same?
They scored the exact same.
The exact same stat line?
Yeah, well, 4.5 points.
That's so funny, man.
Dude, Warren was super frustrating. He saw 9 targets and half of them didn't.
They
didn't
just
matter.
missed him on that play action to the corner.
Oh, yes. No, I
Rivers was under pressure and
rewatched that
underthrew
play
it.
about 4 times.
Yeah.
I feel like Detroit, I feel like they need to tell John Morton to see ya. Like, just like, hey, bud. Or at least he gets demoted to, like, the copier room or something, their offensive coordinator.
He can't even be like the run game coordinator or something like that.
No, they need to put him in a
Wow.
role where it has nothing to do with football.
Geez, sorry, John. That's harsh.
Yeah, I think Dan Campbell will look at this stretch, and they haven't won all these games, but the offense is way more effective. So I think that's my biggest thing, because this team's going to pretty much stay status quo, same exact group coming back. So I guess just health for Sam Laporta and Campbell being the offensive coordinator. I think Minnesota's probably the most interesting team. And I don't want to quote you verbatim, but earlier this morning you said they are the team that you want to be the most bullish on this offseason.
I mean, they're almost 500, which is crazy for what's going on when you're thinking about the quarterback play they've gotten or lack thereof. Max Brosmer, Carson Wentz, J.J. McCarthy has obviously had his issues. And then you look at kind of the offensive line. It's like, man, they've had offensive line injuries from the get-go. Christian Darrisaw coming off ACL surgeries, hasn't been 100% the entire season. He's on IR now. They've lost their center multiple times, the right tackle multiple times. Like, if you just kind of put those pieces back together and they're healthy, which is never a guarantee in the NFL, and you have the weapons of Justin Jefferson and Jordan Addison, it's asking a lot, but you've got to get quarterback play here. And Kevin O'Connell, I don't want to get lost in the weeds of the season. If we zoom out, has always gotten good quarterback play from guys he's coached. So I still trust KOC. I still trust kind of the system there. And obviously it's helpful to play in the dome and all those things. So I don't want to get so kind of stuck in what happened this year. And I want to zoom out and say, like, I think this is still a good system for a quarterback to come in and perform. The question is, who is it? Is it J.J. McCarthy? Do they bring in, I don't know, like a guy in camp to kind of compete with him and push him? That's the major question for this team, but I'm still very in on the Vikings.
All right, moving to the NFC South, the Buccaneers have kind of flatlined over the last month. And midway through the season, you and I were having this discussion we talked about on the DFS podcast, but one of the things that Baker has regressed in, and for a while because they didn't have Mike Evans, is that they were one of the worst teams in the league against man coverage. And currently right now, they are 29th in the NFL in passing yards against man coverage. Baker's completing less than 55% of his passes. Betz, this number that I'm about to give you is gross because they are dead last in the NFL in yards per attempt against man coverage, 4.7 yards per attempt.
Buzz your girlfriend. Woof. That is horrible.
To compare, Drake May's leading the league at 9.8.
What was it, 4.7?
4.7. Like, the Chiefs are right above them. The Jets have a higher yards per pass attempt against man coverage this year. The Falcons do.
That is terrible. Yeah, they need Mike Evans. But the problem is, like,
they need a bully. They need somebody that can get open in one-on-one situations, and that's why you didn't have that. Anyway, yeah, I'm with you. Like, do you think he comes back?
I think he does. I think he runs it back at least one more year. Godwin is he just signed this offseason, right? So he'll be healthier next year. I know it's been rough for Ibuka, but he's still a first-round receiver who's talented. And look, I was the first one to cast off Jalen McMillan. It's like, they took Ibuka. Clearly, like, they value him more, but, like, he's playing more than Ibuka right now, and he's looked pretty good in his opportunities here the last couple of weeks. So you have that group of 4 at wide receiver. Like, that is really, really good. So we need better health from the offensive line, from the wide receiver group, and all those things. And I think Baker can bounce back next year.
For the Panthers, it's real quick. I just want Jalen Coker to be a thing in the slot.
Yes, please. He's looked good the last couple of weeks.
If you have him on your dynasty roster, he's one of those players that either maybe this offseason you get him as like a throw in from somebody else, but like I want to be in on him because I think over the next year his price could definitely go up.
Yeah, if you miss kind of the story of the offseason with Coker, if you recall, like the week before the season started, I think it was, maybe 10 days or so. He had a significant quad strain, landed him on IR. He missed the first 6-ish weeks of the season and then kind of got slow played back in. So it's obviously not been a great year in general, but you've seen kind of some flashes as why they were so excited about him here over the last month or so. And when you think about kind of Leggett and what he does, it's like, yeah, just go on the outside, man. Like, just run around and open up some stuff for McMillan and Coker. And I think that could work with this offense. So I do like that call quite a bit. He's definitely on the list of guys I'm trying to add more of via trade this offseason.
And excuse my bluntness here, but for the Falcons, I would love it if our organization broke up with itself. Actually sat down, had a heart-to-heart conversation, said, we can't keep doing this. Rich McKay, Terry Fontenot, our GM, Raheem Morris, our owner, Arthur Blank, all of these people have been giving way too big of a leeway. And the fact that the Falcons are winning down the stretch is only going to make it worse. Please don't resign Kyle Pitts. Extend Drake London. And don't reach on your draft picks. But none of that stuff's going to happen.
They're definitely going to extend London.
Okay, maybe London.
What is the quarterback situation? Like, do they just run it back with Kirk and wait till Penix is healthy? And
they're basically what the Colts are.
Cool.
Yeah, that's the plan. It's hey, we've invested this much, and
is Raheem? He's not on the hot seat, is he?
Raheem, was on the hot seat. He should have been fired, and now he's back in the good graces.
I could see them giving him another year, though.
It's fine. I think Zach Robinson's actually been okay. That's kind of been the quiet thing, is that, and the defense is actually much improved. They're like third in the league in sacks. They hit on the rookie picks. They don't have their first round pick, but they've been.
This might be a contrarian take. I actually love what they're doing when both Algier and Bijan are on the field together. Which in fantasy, we're all like, get out of the way, Algier. Like, we want Bijan to have everything. Guys, he's getting enough. He's been amazing. But when they can get Bijan in motion and confuse defenses, and I remember that Bills game earlier in the year, Robinson was kind of cooking in that game with Bijan and how they were using him, and it's kind of been up and down throughout the course of the season. But I do think there's something there with that tandem. Isn't Algier? I think he's a
free agent.
Yeah, we'll see what they do. But I'm at least leaving the light on. Quarterback play is a concern, but we'll see.
NFL wise, it works. I think for fantasy, it frustrates everybody. But come on, Bijan's unbelievable. I cannot tell you how many times in the last month I have told people this is a video game character you're getting to watch every single week play football.
Dude, and him against the Cardinals was unreal this past weekend.
Dude, Monday Night Football, deciding championships, like we all thought.
I have a Bijan team, and I can't wait to be disappointed.
He's on Mike and I's team. The Saints, I think it's pretty simple. They've hit on Kellen Moore. They've hit on Tyler Shuck as a second-round pick, which we brought up the statistic beforehand. It's very rare for that to happen. It's Jalen Hurts, Jimmy Garoppolo, Derek Carr that got more than one season as a starter. And now it's going to be Tyler Shuck because they're going to be picking outside of where the quarterback range is, and he's playing well. So it's more of just seeing what else you can build around him. At running back, they still have to figure out some stuff. At offensive line, they still have to figure out some stuff. But I think the Saints are moving in the right direction, and Kellen Moore was the right hire. Do you agree?
I agree. Yeah, nothing really to add there. They pick probably in the top 10, but like you said, in this quarterback class, Tyler Shuck's kind of done it himself. He's like, you're not taking another quarterback. I'm going to win a couple games here, so we don't have the option to pick a quarterback high. And it feels like they should just build around him. And like you said, what if? What if he's the guy? I don't think we have enough data to know the answer, and they don't have enough data to know the answer, but this team is not a player or two away from competing for a Super Bowl, right? They need multiple pieces, and if you can hit on Tyler Shuck for dirt cheap for the next couple of years, that's kind of a cheat code in the NFL. So at least give him a chance and see what he can do.
Yeah, and it looks like they'll have a fourth place schedule. So they will be one of those teams that you will circle and say, hey, if they won 8 or 9 games next year, that wouldn't be shocking at all to me in a terrible division. NFC West, we're closing out for Seattle, just upgrading the line more. It's at a spot now where it's been super effective, but the run game has been really bad. For all the love that we give Clint Kubiak this year, and we were told before the season they were going to run the ball, they've been bottom 5 in almost every single rush success rate metric, and yet they're the number 1 seed in the NFC. So do they run it back with Kenneth Walker? I would say no, but they're still going to be a team that leans on the run.
Yeah, we'll see what they do. They tried to invest in the offensive line this year with Gray Zabel, which I think he's been pretty good for them, but they definitely need a couple more pieces there. It's kind of funny, we spent all offseason talking about the run scheme and how it's going to be great for Ken Walker and maybe Charbonnet and all those things. The truth is, none of that has worked. They've still been successful, but they have to get that going a little bit. because we have seen through multiple stops in Sam Darnold's career, and to his credit, he's been awesome. So like, I don't want to like take away from Sam Darnold, but you do need that effective play action pass game for him to be the best version of himself, is how I would put it. You don't want Sam Darnold to be a pure drop back passer without a support in the run game. And that's kind of when I think the weaknesses have shown up for him, negative game scripts and stuff like that. So yeah, to figure out the run game, upgrade the offensive line. That's kind of what I would say too for Seattle.
For the Rams, they spent the second round pick on Terrence Ferguson this past year, and you've seen little blips here. A couple weeks ago, he led the team in routes, and then you saw a touchdown this past week. Like, he's going to be in the mix. They still have Davis Allen under contract for one more year, Colby Parkinson for one more year. They're probably going to live a lot in 12 and 13 personnel. It's going to be annoying, but I think he can take a step forward, and I think he could be one of those players. Now, I want him to be Evan Ingram at Evan Ingram's best, just a PPR monster. I don't think he fits in this offense that way, but he could end up being a top 10 tight end in the next year or two.
Yeah, you'll probably need some touchdown variants to go his way, because as long as Puka is there, and we'll see how long Devontae sticks around, but in the NFL, just for kind of where he's at, but as long as he is good, which Devontae's been good this year, it's hard to see a ton of volume for him most weeks, but could they kind of start to slowly work him in more and more, and then next year really get him going, and then like in year 3, you kind of see the vision of what this team is expecting? I think so. So if you have Ferguson, which I do in a couple of places, it's obviously been a really slow year, but I think just guys tied to this offense and this scheme and how they're using 12 and 13 personnel, you have to be excited. So I do like him long-term. If there's somebody in your league that's kind of sleeping on the situation, which I can't imagine there's a lot of people, but if there is, he's also a guy that like I'm starring and trying to get on my rosters this offseason.
For the 49ers, at wide receiver, they are clearing the deck of Brandon Ayuk. Juwan Jennings will be a free agent. He has some escalators in his contract over the final couple weeks that he can hit, and he's been very good. So we'll see about that. But I think it's just Ricky Pearsall, somebody this team took in the first round. If he can be healthy, then he can literally step into being the number one target on the team. The runway's there.
Yeah, for sure. And you've seen that at times this year. Like early in the year when they've had health issues at wide receiver, he really was awesome. And then, of course, he missed all that time. And then the first game back 2 weeks ago, he was great. He unlocks a part of the offense down the field that, Juwan Jennings is like a solid possession type guy. He's kind of known to be a contested catch bully. But like, you're not asking him to win huge downfield routes and really open up explosives.
He's Michael Pittman.
Yeah, which has always been a piece of this Shanahan offense. That was the Ayuk role from when they still liked Ayuk, a couple of years ago. Pearsall can be that. He just needs to be healthy. And I came into the season kind of skeptical on Pearsall because he wasn't the cleanest prospect. He was older and all those things. I've seen enough on the field to think that he is good in the scheme and system. It's just health, man. Like, please stay healthy, Pearsall.
Yeah, in my leagues where health doesn't matter, he's really good.
Him and who else?
He's such a hard player to buy into for Dynasty, though. I mean, I get the selling point of what you just said, but just when it comes down to it, I'm like, do I want to trade for this player? Health stuff aside, where I didn't love the profile coming in, and he's been pretty up and down.
Yeah, but when he's been on the field, I feel like he's earned targets at a pretty reasonable rate.
Dude, I have
this year.
Yes. I don't have him anywhere, and I feel the feeling of like, man, if I started him and he's been injured, or I started him and he went like 2 for 5 or something, that would drive me crazy.
Yeah.
All right, final team is the Cardinals, and as somebody who has Kyler in a super flex, trade this man away. Please trade this man away so I can get some life.
It seems over, doesn't it?
I think so.
I mean, it's easy to say on the outside where it's like, oh, there's no financials involved. Just trade him.
Yeah, just trade him.
But yeah, I mean, it seems like there's no marriage there, and I don't even know if Gannon's going to be there. So do they clean house and all those things? Yeah, I've seen some rumors on Kyler to the Jets, to the Vikings, places like that, which makes sense. And obviously, it's very early in the process. But I also have Kyler places, and I would love for myself and you, Kyle, to have a second starting quarterback soon.
They are currently picking 6. They've lost 7 in a row. Yeah, they're at a spot now where I think there's enough pieces there. Like their defense, they spent a lot of draft capital, all their draft capital on the defense. They've had a lot of injuries there too. Walter Nolan, their first round pick, just got injured and out for the rest of the year. But I think this team can move in the right direction. You just kind of have to clean house too. And so this is a Clint Kubiak spot, actually, for me that I would kind of like, staying in division.
I could see it.
So that's going to do it for this episode. Betz, sign everybody off and tell them Merry
Yes,
Christmas.
Merry Christmas, everybody. Hopefully everybody enjoys the holiday. I know Kyle's been a little bit of a grouch here today. I'm sorry. But Merry Christmas to you all. We'll catch you next week. Enjoy the holiday. We'll see you.
Thanks for listening to the Fantasy Footballers Dynasty Podcast. If you want to take your dynasty skills to the next level, check out thefantasyfootballers.com.